Welcome to Science for Sleepy Minds. Tonight your only job is to rest. You do not have to take notes, you do not have to remember anything perfectly, and you certainly do not need to solve any big mysteries. You've done enough for one day. For now, you can imagine that each word is just a soft step across a dark and quiet room, coming to sit beside you as you lie there, eyes closed or half closed, feeling the pull of sleep somewhere just beneath the surface. Maybe your mind is still buzzing a little. Maybe parts of the day keep replaying, or tomorrow's already trying to start early in your thoughts. That is all right. Minds do that, especially when we are tired. This time is a small, gentle space where you do not have to follow those thoughts if you do not want to. You can let them drift to the edges like distant conversation in another room, while you stay here in the calm center. You might be lying on your back or on your side, curled into a comfortable shape. You might be tucked under a blanket, feeling its weight resting over you or feeling the coolness of the air on your face. Wherever you are, however you are, you're welcome here. Think of this as someone quietly tucking a blanket around your shoulders, smoothing out the corners, and then sitting nearby, speaking softly about something gently interesting while you drift. Tonight, the story is about something very close to you. In fact, it is so close that you cannot step outside it to look at it directly. It is the simple, mysterious feeling of being you. The sense that there is a you here, listening, feeling, sensing the bed beneath you and the thoughts passing by. We call that consciousness. And there is a curious question people sometimes ask. If consciousness is real, can we prove it the way we prove other things in science? Scientists can measure so much now. They can look at patterns of electrical activity in the brain, watch regions light up in scans when people see or feel or imagine different things. They can test reactions, measure reflexes, chart behavior. But the quiet, private feeling of being you right now, in this moment before sleep, that is harder to capture. It is not a number on a screen or a line on a graph. It is more like a soft candle inside the dark, something you see from within rather than from the outside. You do not need to wrestle with that question tonight. You do not have to decide what consciousness is or how to prove it. You are simply invited to cradle this mystery gently, like holding a small warm stone in your hand in the dark. You can turn it over a little, feel its weight, and then, if you want, you can let it rest while you slide slowly towards sleep. And remember, it is completely okay to fall asleep at any time. You do not have to wait for the end. There does not need to be an end. If your mind grows fuzzy halfway through a sentence, if you slip in and out, catching a phrase here and there, that is perfectly fine. The words will keep flowing quietly whether you are fully awake or halfway in a dream. You're not going to miss anything you need. If you find these gentle science rambles comforting, you can someday, when you are more awake, tap like or subscribe so they are easy to find again. But that is for another time, another version of you who has more energy. For now, we're going to return to quiet, and to your body, and to rest. Take a moment to notice how you are lying. You might make a tiny adjustment, just enough to feel a little more supported. Maybe your pillow could be tucked a bit closer under your neck. Maybe your shoulders want to roll back or curl forward. Let your arms find a place where they can rest without effort, hands heavy and warm. There is no rush. You have all the time you need to wiggle a little and then settle. When you are ready, gently notice your breathing. You do not have to change it yet, just observe it. The air comes in, the air goes out. The body knows how to do this on its own. Feel the coolness of the inhale at the tip of your nose or at the back of your throat. Notice the soft warmth of the exhale as it leaves. If it feels comfortable, you might allow the inhale to lengthen just a little, like a calm tide rising, and then let the exhale be a bit longer, like the tide slowly slipping back down the sand. In, slowly, and then out, a little more slowly. There is no perfect rhythm, no right number, just a gentle curiosity about how it feels to slow the breath, as if you are turning down the volume on the day. As you breathe, bring your attention to the places where your body touches what supports you. The back of your head resting on the pillow, the weight of your shoulders sinking into the mattress, the curve of your spine, the way your hips settle, the softness or firmness beneath your legs and feet. Imagine that the bed or the couch or the ground beneath you is very patient, very steady. It is holding you up without asking anything from you. With each exhale, you might imagine giving a little more of your weight to whatever you are lying on, like handing over heavy bags after a long journey. You do not need to carry yourself right now. Gravity and the bed can do that for you. Now, if you like, bring your attention slowly to your forehead. Notice if it feels tight or furrowed. See if you can let the skin there soften, as though someone is gently smoothing out a crease in a sheet. Let your eyebrows drift away from each other. Let that softening travel down to your eyes. Even if they are closed, many of us hold a little tension there. See if your eyelids can rest more heavily, as if each one is a small curtain settling. Behind your eyes, imagine warm, clear water, the kind that gently washes away leftover images from the day. Move down to your cheeks, your jaw. If your teeth are pressed together, you can let them separate just slightly. Let your tongue rest comfortably in your mouth. Picture your jaw hanging on invisible threads that loosen one by one until it simply hangs in an easy, relaxed way. Let this wave of warmth wander down into your neck, your throat. Maybe there are little muscles there that have been working all day, holding your head at different angles as you looked at screens or nodded in conversation. Give them permission to rest. With each exhale, imagine tension flowing out of them, like sand slipping through an hourglass. Now, your shoulders. Many people carry the weight of the day there. As you breathe out, imagine that your shoulders are slowly melting downward, becoming a little heavier, a little closer to the surface beneath you. You might even imagine that someone is gently pressing a warm cloth over them, the heat seeping in, persuading the muscles to release their grip. Let that feeling drift down your arms, into your elbows, your wrists, and your hands. Notice if your hands are clenched or curled. See if they want to uncurl, fingers resting in a loose, comfortable shape. Imagine warm, golden light pooling in your palms, then flowing down through each finger, all the way to the tips. Bring awareness to your chest now, rising and falling with your breathing. You do not need to change anything, just notice. The rise, the fall. Perhaps you can imagine your chest as a quiet lake surface, expanding and relaxing with each breath. The water is calm, the air above it is still. Let your attention slide down to your stomach. If it feels safe and comfortable, allow your belly to soften, to rise with the inhale and fall with the exhale. Many of us hold our stomachs tight as if bracing. For now, there is nothing to brace against. You are allowed to let go. Imagine warm light, the colour of late afternoon sun corn resting there, soothing every small knot of worry. Move lower to your hips, your pelvis, your thighs. These parts of you carry you through the day, step after step, supporting your weight. Now they do not have to do anything. Feel them sink a little heavier into the bed. Picture tension sliding down through your legs, dripping out through your knees, pooling gently at your feet and then draining away, like water finding its level. Finally, notice your ankles, your heels, the soles of your feet, your toes. You might wiggle your toes once just to say hello to them and then let them become still. Imagine that each toe is a tiny stone dropping into a clear pond, disappearing into soft depth as your awareness of them fades into the general feeling of heaviness and rest. If you like imagery, you can picture yourself lying in a small sturdy boat on a calm lake at dusk. The water around you is glassy and still, the sky above is changing from blue to deep indigo, and the first stars are appearing. Your body is the boat, cradling you. Your breath is the slight, slow rocking of the water as tiny ripples form and fade. Nothing disturbs the surface. You're drifting, but gently, so gently that it feels almost like floating in place. Around this little boat you might see the glow of distant lanterns along a shore. They are far enough away that their light is soft and muted. One by one those lanterns grow dimmer, as if someone is turning them down for the night. Perhaps each lantern is a part of your day, a conversation, a task, a worry. You do not have to blow them out or push them away. They simply fade on their own until all that is left is the sky, the water, and you, breathing. Or, if you prefer, you can imagine yourself in a small cabin in a quiet forest. Inside, a single warm light hangs above you, casting a golden glow on wooden walls. Outside, the trees are dark shapes against a deep sky, their leaves stirring in a slow, sleepy breeze. The light in the cabin gradually softens, shifting from bright gold to honey, from honey to amber, from amber to the gentle silver of moonlight. As it dims, your body grows heavier, as if the light were holding your thoughts up and now is letting them fall away. With your body a little more relaxed, your breath a little slower, we can step softly into tonight's idea. To do that, imagine that the cabin door opens and you step out onto a small hill, or the boat beneath you glides to the shore and you step out onto the cool grass. You look up, and there it is, a wide night sky. It might be the sky above a quiet hill, or the sky seen from the balcony of a mountain observatory, the great dome behind you like a sleeping giant. Somewhere nearby, maybe there is the faint smell of pine or cold stone, a trace of earth, the whisper of distant trees. The air is cool on your cheeks. When you breathe in, it feels clean and calm. When you breathe out, it feels like your thoughts are leaving with the mist of your breath. Above you, the stars are scattered across the darkness, some bright and sharp, some faint and soft. They look almost like tiny thoughts, each one a pinpoint of light against a vast velvety backdrop of dark. Between them is the deep blackness of space, not empty but quiet, like the pause between heartbeats. You settle down on the grass or in a reclining chair wrapped in a blanket, the fabric insulating you from the chill. The world around you is mostly asleep now. Perhaps there are distant city lights on the horizon, twinkling faintly, like a cluster of neurons firing far away in a different lobe of the brain. Perhaps there is the gentle hum of a far-off road, like a memory of motion rather than motion itself. Mostly there is stillness. In this stillness, there is a small, curious presence, you, the one who is seeing the stars, feeling the blanket, sensing the air. Have you ever noticed how strange it is that there is something it feels like to be you, seeing the sky, lying on this bed, hearing these words? Not just the fact of eyes receiving light or ears receiving sound, but the inner experience of it, the way it appears inside your awareness. You can imagine the stars as thoughts in your mind, each star a worry, a memory, an image, a plan. They appear, they glow for a while, they fade. But what about the darkness around them, the vast space that holds them all? That dark background is like your awareness itself, Thoughts and sensations appear within it, drift across it, and dissolve back into it. What is that background? What is this open, quiet place in which everything else shows up? You know that there is a bed beneath you because there is something in you that notices the pressure on your back, the warmth of the blankets. You know there is a sound of my voice because there is something in you that hears and experiences that sound. If you close your eyes, there may be colours or shapes, or simply a gentle dark. All of it appears somewhere inside this field of awareness. Scientists can study the stars of your mind in a way. They can look at brain cells firing, at patterns of activity that correspond with seeing, hearing, remembering. They can map out which parts of the brain light up when you look at the night sky, or when you recall a worried thought, or when you relax. But the feeling of those experiences, the fact that there is anything it is like at all, remains something special. It is as if they could measure the vibrations of a musical instrument, but not quite capture the way the melody makes you feel. This is where the question appears. If consciousness is real, can it be proven the way we prove that a star exists, or a planet, or a chemical reaction? Some people challenge, almost like a puzzle, show me consciousness in a test tube, or on a graph, or in a photograph. Prove that it is there. But the truth is quieter. Consciousness is not something we normally see from the outside. It is something we know from the inside. It is a kind of first-person secret. But not a secret in the sense of something hidden on purpose. More like a secret because it can only be directly accessed by the one having it. You do not need to feel any pressure to answer that puzzle. Tonight it is just a story, a gentle starting point. The challenge itself can be held softly, like a question written in the sky with faint chalk. Over the next little while we will wander around that question, what consciousness seems to be, how science tries to study it, and why there is still so much mystery. But we will do it slowly, in widening circles, and you can step back from the detail whenever you wish. Maybe, as you listen, sleep will come. Maybe you will only catch fragments. That is all right. You are not here to pass a test. You are here to rest inside curiosity, to let your mind have something calm and interesting to drift with, as it forgets the busy patterns of the day. What do we even mean by this word consciousness that people toss around in late-night conversations and scientific papers? One simple way to begin is to think about very ordinary moments. Not the big dramatic scenes of life, but the small quiet ones. Imagine you are in your kitchen in the morning holding a warm mug between your hands. You feel the heat of the cup on your palms, the slight texture of the ceramic against your fingers. You bring the mug closer, and there is the smell of coffee or tea rising in a little cloud of steam. You take a sip, and there is the taste, the warmth flowing down into you. All of that is happening in the world, the cup, the liquid, the temperature, the light. But there is also how it feels to you. The when the warmth reaches your chest, the comfort of the familiar taste. That felt side of things. That inner glow of experience is part of what we call consciousness. Imagine listening to rain against a window, the soft patter, the occasional heavier drop, the shifting rhythm like distant applause. On the outside it is just water droplets hitting glass. On the inside there may be a feeling, cozy, calm, perhaps a touch of nostalgia. The sound is out there. The feeling is in here. Consciousness is the space where the sound becomes something lived, something experienced. Right now in bed you can try a tiny experiment. Gently notice the feeling of the fabric against your hand, or the coolness or warmth of the air on your face. Ask yourself very softly, what does this actually feel like? Not in words or analysis, but just in the direct sensation. That noticing, that direct sense, is the simple heart of consciousness. Meanwhile, many things in your body are happening without entering this inner stage at all. Your heart is beating, sending blood through miles of vessels without you having to think about each contraction. Your stomach is quietly digesting whatever you last ate. Your immune system is patrolling, cells talking to cells in a language of chemicals. You might not be aware of any of that happening. It is like a bustling city underneath the surface, all the work going on in the basements and back rooms, while consciousness is the view from a balcony, looking out over the main square. So one gentle way to distinguish consciousness from unconscious processes is this. Consciousness includes the things you're aware of, the things that appear in your inner space. Unconscious processes are all the things that go on without showing up there. You do not choose every thought. Many arrive by themselves. You do not feel every detail of what your liver is doing. Those processes still matter, but they are backstage. Scientists sometimes define consciousness as subjective experience. That is a dense phrase, but you can think of it simply as what it is like to be you, not what it is like to be a person in general or a brain in general. But this particular viewpoint right here, right now, the sound of this voice in your ears, the way your body feels against the bed, the emotional tone of this evening. It is like an inner glow or an inner movie, with sights, sounds, thoughts and feelings, all appearing in the quiet theatre of your mind. And perhaps, as you think about this, there is a part of you that feels a little overwhelmed. The idea of consciousness can feel enormous, tangled with big philosophical questions. What am I? Where does this awareness come from? What happens to it when I sleep or dream or when a life ends? Those questions can be heavy and they do not have simple answers. If that heaviness appears, you can let it drift by like a cloud. It's perfectly okay not to understand any of this fully. In fact, even the scientists who spend their entire careers studying consciousness do not agree on what it is or how exactly it arises. You're in good company if it feels mysterious. You do not have to push yourself to figure it out before you can rest. All you need to know tonight is this. Whatever consciousness ultimately is, you're familiar with it already in the simplest way. You feel tired, you hear a voice, you notice your breath, you slip towards sleep. That is enough. Those tiny, ordinary experiences are the doorway into the topic, and they're already here with you, like a quiet friend sitting beside your bed in the dark, keeping you company as you drift. If you are still awake with me, you can think of this as just a gentle continuation of the same slow, sleepy stream of thought you are already floating along. And if you happen to drift off and wake up again, that is perfectly okay too. You do not need to remember where we were. You never need to remember everything here. You can just arrive in this moment exactly as you are and let the words wash quietly past you. You might take a tiny moment to notice your body again. Maybe you have shifted a little, found a slightly more comfortable position. If you want to adjust anything, you can do that now. In slow motion, a pillow tucked closer under your head, a blanket pulled up, a shoulder rolled, a knee bent. Then see if you can let your body become still again, like a stone resting at the bottom of a clear pond. Notice your breath without trying to manage it too much. Perhaps a slightly deeper breath in, and then a long, slow breath out. As if the day itself were leaving your body with the exhale. Each breath is a small reminder. You are here, you are safe enough to rest, and there is nothing pressing you need to do. Before we wander further into the science, you might remember very faintly that we were talking about consciousness as that simple feeling of being you, the warmth of a mug in your hands, the sound of rain, the sensation of your body against the bed right now. Consciousness is not every little process happening in your body. but the part of you that actually experiences things, that inner space where sensations, thoughts, and feelings appear. We also notice that so much of what keeps you alive goes on without your awareness. Your heart pulses quietly, your stomach works through your last meal, your cells whisper to each other in chemical signals. All of that can carry on whether you pay attention to it or not. Consciousness, in contrast, is the part of your life that involves noticing, feeling, being aware tonight. We will gently turn our attention toward the physical organ that seems most closely tied to this awareness, the brain. Not in a cold or clinical way, more like strolling through a city at night, looking at the glowing windows and wondering what kinds of lives are happening inside. You can imagine, if you like, that we are slowly zooming in from that night sky above the hill or the observatory. The stars shrink, the earth grows larger beneath us, and the view glides down toward a single human being lying in bed. Maybe that human is you. We pass through the roof, the ceiling, the air, and drift down into the quiet darkness of the skull, where the brain rests like a folded, sleeping landscape. The brain is often drawn as a kind of wrinkled grey shape, but in your imagination you can give it more life. Picture it as a softly glowing city, full of twisting streets and tiny buildings. The folds and grooves are valleys and hills. Different regions are like neighbourhoods, each one with its own style and mood, but connected by countless pathways. Toward the back, there is a region that helps process visual information. You might imagine it as a district full of screens and canvases, where patterns of light are examined and interpreted. On the sides, there are neighbourhoods that help you hear and understand language, and feel the touch of the world on your skin. At the front, behind your forehead, is a bustling area that helps with planning and decisions, like a city hall or a cluster of thoughtful cafes where people sit, considering what to do next. All of this is made of cells, around 80 or so billion neurons, give or take. It is hard to picture a number that large, so you do not need to. Just know that there are many, many tiny beings inside you, each neuron a little messenger with branches reaching out to many others. You can imagine them as small lanterns along narrow streets, or as fireflies hovering in the dark. When one neuron sends a signal to another, it is like a tiny blink of light. On, off, on, off. Billions of ventricles flowing and combining and fading every second. These signals are electrical and chemical, little pulses that travel along the branches of the neurons. Where two neurons meet, there is a tiny gap called a synapse, and chemicals bridge that gap, passing the message on. The brain is full of these minute conversations happening in parallel, some about movement, some about sensations, some about memories, some about nothing in particular, like idle chatter in a crowded cafe. Most of the time you are not aware of those individual flickers. You do not feel each neuron fire. What you experience is the overall pattern they create together. It is a bit like looking at a city from a distance at night. You do not see every person, every lamp, every conversation. You see the glow of all the lights together, a kind of shimmering map of activity. When you are awake and alert, this city brain buzzes in a particular way. Certain regions are busy passing messages quickly. There is a lot of communication between far-flung neighbourhoods. It is a bit like a daytime rush hour. Decisions being made, signals being sent, many things happening at so at once. In brain scans, this might show up as one pattern of waves. When you begin to get sleepy, that pattern changes. Some areas quiet down. The brain slips into different rhythms. When you finally fall into deep sleep, the activity becomes slower and more synchronized, like a crowd humming the same low song. In dreaming sleep, when you have vivid dreams, the brain becomes more active again, but with a different kind of pattern, as if parts of the city have turned into theatres, staging internal plays without much input from the outside world. Scientists have spent decades recording these patterns: waves of electrical activity, shifts in blood flow, changes in which parts of the brain are talking most to one another. They have found regularities. Certain kinds of activity are associated with conscious awareness, and other patterns with unconscious states, like deep sleep or anesthesia. These patterns are sometimes called neural correlates of consciousness, the brain events that tend to show up whenever a person reports being aware of something. That phrase can sound a bit heavy, but you can think of it in a gentle way. Imagine you notice the sound of a bird outside your window. At the same time, inside your brain, certain regions become more active. Areas processing the sound, areas relating it to memory, areas perhaps involved in attention. Those brain activities are like ripples created by the bird song. The fact that you have an inner experience of the sound seems to go hand in hand with that pattern of ripples. However, there is an important and soothing reminder here. Even if scientists can see which parts of the brain are involved, and even if they can say, whenever this pattern appears, the person says they are aware of this or that, the brain scan is still an outside view. It shows where and when. It shows the shape of the ripples, but it does not show how the experience feels from the inside. A scan might show a bright spot when you taste chocolate, but the picture on the screen does not taste sweet, does not feel creamy or rich. It is just colours and numbers representing blood flow. The actual flavour lives in your awareness. The scan is like a map of a city. The consciousness is like walking through its streets, smelling food, hearing music, feeling the pavement under your feet. So the brain is deeply involved in consciousness. Damage certain areas and certain aspects of experience change. Put someone into certain kinds of dreamless sleep, and their ordinary waking awareness disappears for a while. Wake them up, and awareness returns. There is a tight relationship, like two dancers moving together. But even when we have mapped the steps of the dance, there is still the question, what is it like to be one of the dancers, and why is there anything it feels like at all? This leads us to the idea of proof. In science, when people talk about proving something, they often mean showing, in a way that others can check, that a certain claim matches what we observe in the world. Proof can mean repeated experiments, careful measurements, predictions that become true. You can prove that water boils at a certain temperature under certain conditions by heating it and measuring. You can prove that a planet orbits a star by tracking its movement again and again, seeing it follow a predictable path. For many things, this works beautifully. You can point at a rock or a tree or a galaxy, and others can, in principle, see the same thing. You can build machines to measure temperature, brightness, distance, energy. The data can be shared, compared, repeated. Science is very good at this kind of shared third-person perspective, where we all look at something from the outside and agree about what we see. Consciousness, though, is different. Your own consciousness is not something you observe from the outside. You cannot step outside yourself to look at your awareness as if it were an object on a table. The only way you know your consciousness directly is by being it, by feeling, seeing, thinking, sensing. This makes consciousness a first-person phenomenon. It lives in the I, the me, the centers of perspective. That does not mean it is less real. In fact, it is in some ways the most familiar thing of all. Everything you know about the world you know through some form of experience. But it does mean that proving consciousness using only the tools designed for outside of third-person observation is tricky. How do scientists even begin to approach this? One way is through behavior and reports. If you tell a researcher, "I see a red light," and at the same time a certain pattern appears in your brain scan, the scientist can say, "When this brain pattern appears and the person reports this experience, we will treat that as evidence of conscious perception." They might then change the light, dim it, switch it to green. See how your reports and brain activity change. Over many trials, they can build a pattern of correlation. But notice what is happening here. The scientist is never directly inside your experience. They cannot personally feel your redness of red. They can only listen to what you say, watch what you do, and look at your brain activity. These are all clues. They are like shadows cast by a light that remains behind the scenes. When you see your friend smile and hear them say, "I am happy," and notice the way they move and speak, you naturally assume that they have an inner feeling that goes with all of that. Not because you can directly access it, but because it resembles what you yourself feel when you smile and speak that way. This is the other mind's puzzle, but in everyday life you do not agonize about it. You simply take it on to trust that other people are also conscious, that they have their own inner spaces where experiences arise. Science, however, is cautious. It tends to prefer things it can measure and see, things that can be checked by many observers. When it comes to consciousness, the only one who can see your experience from the inside is you. So scientists use your words, your reaction, your brain scans as stand-ins, as signs. They say, "Given this outward behavior and these patterns, we will treat this being as conscious." There is a gentle reassurance hidden in all of this. Just because consciousness is private does not mean it is uncertain or fragile. In fact, your own awareness is the one thing you do not need anyone else to prove for you. You might doubt many things, you might question memories, stories, facts, but the simple fact that something is happening in your awareness right now, sounds, sensations, thoughts, is undeniable from your own perspective. You may not know exactly what consciousness is, but you know what it is like to be here, listening. The question, "If consciousness is real, prove it," can sound harsh, almost confrontational. But you do not have to hear it that way. You can hear it as a kind of playful puzzle instead, a reminder of how unusual consciousness is compared to rocks and planets and boiling water. It is not that consciousness is less real, it is that it occupies a different kind of reality, one that is lived from the inside rather than only measured from the outside. You might imagine for a moment someone standing under the same night sky we pictured earlier, but with a clipboard and instruments, carefully plotting star positions, measuring wavelengths, calculating distances. Their view is detailed, analytical, beautiful in its own way. Then imagine you, lying back on the grass, just feeling the vastness above you, the cool air, the quiet. The person with the clipboard, and you are both relating to the same sky, but in different modes. Science so far has been much better at the clipboard mode. Consciousness asks to be felt as well. If this all starts to feel like a lot, you can let it soften. You might remind yourself again, you do not need to solve this. Your role tonight is not to prove consciousness to anyone, not even to yourself. Your role is simply to be conscious, and to let that awareness slowly dim into sleep, like the lights of a city going out one by one. To help the mind settle, we can turn these ideas into a gentler image. Imagine your awareness as a small clear lantern inside you. The lantern does not need to prove that it is glowing, it simply glows. Around it, in the darkness, are all the tools of science, rulers, microscopes, brain scanners, data sheets. They're all useful for many things. They can tell us a lot about how the lantern was built, how the fuel moves, how the glass is shaped, but none of them is the same as the glow itself. When someone says, "Prove to me that the glow is real," the lantern does not argue. It does not wave its light angrily. It just continues to shine quietly, doing what it does. Your own awareness is like that. It does not need to shout to justify itself. It can be soft, especially at night, in these last waking moments. As you lie here, you might notice how your own awareness shifts. Perhaps at the beginning your mind was sharper, more focused on each sentence. Now there may be moments when you forget what was just said, or when you notice a gap, as if you were briefly somewhere else. That too is part of consciousness, the way it flickers, brightens, dims, and eventually gives way to deeper sleep where the narrative dissolves. Try not to chase your awareness, trying to keep it sharp. Let it wander where it wants to go. If it clings to a thought from the day, you can imagine that thought as a star that glows brightly for a moment and then slides gently down the sky, out of view. If it returns to something we have said, or picks up a piece of the story and turns it over, that is fine too. And if it drifts off into unrelated images and half dreams, that is more than fine. That is exactly what this time is for. In the quiet city of your brain, some neurons are still firing away, following patterns that keep the body safe and stable. Others are beginning to settle into the slow, synchronized hum of sleep. Somewhere in that shifting landscape, consciousness is slowly loosening its grip on the outer world, turning inward toward dreams. The scientific instruments that might measure this would see changing waves, shifting rhythms. From your side, it may feel like a gentle fading, a soft blur at the edges of your thoughts. You are allowed to trust that process. In the same way that you trust your heart to beat without your supervision, you can trust your brain to find its way into sleep. Consciousness does not have to be forced away. It can be allowed to soften, like a candle burning lower and lower on its own. And as it does, the question of proof can become quieter as well. For now, it is enough to know that there is something it feels like to be you, lying here, listening. That inner feeling does not need a laboratory or a witness. It is simply present, like the gentle awareness of your breath, the knowledge that your body is resting, the subtle comfort of a soft, sleepy voice keeping you company in the dark. If you are still awake, you and I are simply picking up a quiet thread that has been drifting beside you this whole time. And if you faded in and out, if some pieces of the story are blurry or missing, that is perfectly okay. You do not need to go back and fill in the gaps. You can arrive here as if you are joining a conversation that has been going on softly in the next room, and you are welcome to listen for as long as you like, or fall asleep again whenever your body decides. Take a small moment to feel the way your body is resting. Notice the shape you have curled into. Maybe you want to let one shoulder relax a little more, or let your jaw soften, or stretch your toes inside the blanket before letting them grow still again. Notice a single slow breath in and a long, restful breath out. Imagine that with each exhale, the day slides a little farther away from you, like a shoreline gradually receding as you drift out on a calm sea. We have already wandered through the idea that consciousness is this simple yet mysterious feeling of being you. The way it feels to drink something warm, to hear the rain, to lie here in the dark and listen. We peeked gently into the brain, imagining it as a glowing city of tiny lights, neurons, whispering to each other in patterns. And we spoke about how science tries to prove things from the outside using measurements and shared observations, while your awareness is known from the inside by being it rather than looking at it. Now, if you feel you have a little curiosity left, we can explore some of the playful puzzles people have invented around this topic. They might sound a little strange at first, like bedtime stories for philosophers, but we will handle them as softly as possible, turning them over like smooth stones in our hands and putting them down whenever you start to feel heavy with sleep. Imagine for a moment a world where there are machines that behave exactly like humans. Not clanking, clattering metal robots, but beings that move and speak and react as we do. When you talk to one of these machines, it looks at you with attentive eyes. It nods in the right places. It laughs at your jokes, or pretends to, just as another person might. If you ask how it feels, it might say, "I am happy," or "I am okay," with the right expressions on its face. From the outside, everything seems the same as with a human. Same words, same reactions, same apparent understanding. But the question some people ask is, inside this machine, is there actually something it feels like to be that entity? Is there an inner life, a glow of experience, or is it all just clever behavior, like a very advanced puppet show with no one watching behind the curtain? There is no simple way to answer that. You cannot open the machine and look for experience the way you might look for a battery. We will probably test it, talk to it, see if its responses changed in subtle ways, look at its internal processes and compare them to human brains. But even then, the question at the core would remain, is there an inner I there, or just a pattern? This kind of thought experiment is not meant to frighten you. You do not need to worry that you might secretly be a machine. It is meant instead to remind us how deeply we connect the idea of consciousness to this inner viewpoint, this perspective that says, "Here I am, feeling the world." When we imagine a being that does everything we do but has no inner life, we get a strange sense of how precious that inner life is to us. Another story people tell involves someone who has learned everything there is to know about colour from the outside. You can picture her in a quiet room surrounded by books and screens. She has studied the physics of light, how different wavelengths correspond to different hues. She knows how the eye works, the way rods and cones respond to light, how signals travel along the optic nerve into the brain. She can explain how certain brain areas activate when a person looks at something red or blue. But in this story there is one twist. Her room is entirely black and white. The books, the screens, the walls, everything is shades of grey. She has never actually seen colour herself. Her knowledge is like a beautifully detailed map of a land she has never visited. She knows all the facts, but not the feeling. One day she steps out of the black and white room. She walks into a garden where flowers are blooming. A bright red rose catches her eye. For the very first time in her life, she experiences the colour red directly. Not as data, not as a number on a wavelength chart, but as a vivid, immediate sensation. There is a tiny inner "oh" as that colour appears in her awareness. The question people ask is, did she learn something new in that moment, even though she already knew every scientific fact about colour vision? It seems to many that she did. Before, she had all the external information. After, she also knew what it is like to see red. That what it is like seems to be something special, something that cannot be fully captured by descriptions or formulas alone. This story is not about proving that science is limited in a negative way. It is more like a gentle reminder that experience itself, the feeling of seeing red, or hearing a melody, or being in love or afraid or peaceful, has a quality that cannot be completely translated into numbers. The numbers can tell us a lot about the conditions and the mechanisms and that is beautiful. But there is still this extra layer, the way it feels. There is another strange character who sometimes wanders into conversations about consciousness, and we will invite them in just briefly, like a passing ghost that we treat kindly and then let go. People call this character a philosophical zombie, though we will imagine them in the least spooky way possible. Picture someone who looks exactly like you. They move the same way. They speak with the same tone, laugh at the same jokes, yawn when they are tired. They say, "I feel happy," or "I am in pain," at all the appropriate moments. If you saw them stubbing their toe, you would wince in sympathy because everything about their behavior suggests that they are feeling something. But in this story, the twist is that internally, there is supposedly nothing it is like to be them. No inner awareness, no conscious experience. The lights are on, in a sense, but no one is home. They are like a perfect actor, responding correctly to every situation, but with no inner life behind the performance. From the outside, you would never know. You might grow up with them, fall in love with them, work alongside them, and never suspect a thing. The only way this character is different is in a way that is not directly visible. Inside, there is no experience. Whether such a being is even truly possible is a matter of debate. Many people think that if a system behaves that richly and flexibly, there must be some kind of inner life there. Others think, at least as a thought experiment, that it is conceivable. But the point of the story is not to frighten you about who might be secretly conscious or not. It is to highlight how important inner experience is to what we mean by being a person. If you take the behavior, the reactions, the words, and strip away the inner feeling, what remains seems like a hollow shell. Your own awareness, the quiet, constant presence that sees, feels, and reflects, is not just an add-on. It is central to your sense of being you. These puzzles are like gentle lights shining on that fact from different angles. As you let these stories drift around in your mind, notice how they come and go. You might find your attention catching on one image and then slipping away, the way you might watch leaves floating on a slow river. You're not required to hold on to any of them. If they become too tangled, you can simply return to the feeling of the bed beneath you, the rhythm of your breathing, the heaviness of your eyelids. Even in the world of science, where focus and precision are so important, people have created these imaginative stories because consciousness is hard to pin down with equations alone. And so, alongside experiments and data, theories of consciousness have grown. Some of them try to describe how information moves in the brain. Some try to explain why certain kinds of processing might produce experience while others do not. We can explore a few of these ideas very softly now, not to memorize them, but to let them pass through your awareness like clouds. One picture people sometimes use is that of a stage in a dark theatre. Imagine your brain as a large shadowy building. Inside there are many rooms and corridors where information is processed quietly behind the scenes. In some rooms there are calculations about where your limbs are. In others there are memories being sorted and filed. In others there are predictions about what might happen next. Most of this backstage activity never reaches your conscious awareness. It is like the work of stagehands, technicians and directors all busy behind the curtain. But at the centre of the theatre is a bright stage. When something is chosen to appear there, a sound, a thought, an image, a sensation, it becomes globally available. Many parts of the brain can access it, respond to it, coordinate around it. In this picture, consciousness is a bit like whatever is currently lit up on the stage. When a stimulus is weak or brief, it might stay backstage, processed unconsciously, but when it is strong enough, relevant enough, or when attention turns toward it, It is brought into the spotlight on the central stage. Once there, it can influence decisions, form part of your report of what you're experiencing, be remembered later. This is often called a global workspace idea. You do not need to remember the name, just remember the gentle image, a dark theatre, a bright stage, and behind it all, a vast network of backstage workers coordinating things. Consciousness in this view is associated with that global stage, with the way some information becomes broadcast widely across the brain. Another idea is more like a web or a tapestry. Imagine again the city of your brain at night, but instead of focusing on the individual lights, think about how they are connected. Some parts of the city are linked by many roads, many bridges, others are more isolated. If you could draw a map of all these connections, you would see a complex woven pattern. Some regions tightly integrated, others less so. Some scientists suggest that consciousness might be related to how richly and deeply information is integrated in this web. If each part were completely separate with no connections, there might be many little isolated sparks, but no unified experience. If everything is linked in the right way, information can combine, influence itself, form a single coherent pattern, like threads woven into a single piece of fabric. In this view, a conscious system is one where information is not just stored, but deeply interconnected. When something happens in one part, it matters for the whole. The experience you have is not just a list of separate sensations, but a unified scene, the feeling of lying in bed, hearing this voice, sensing the shape of your body all at once. That unity, some think, might depend on a certain style of integration in the underlying physical system. You can imagine this as a sheet of cloth stretched out. If the threads are only loosely laid next to each other, touching here and there, it is easy to separate them. Signals do not travel far, but if they are woven tightly, tugging on one corner moves many threads. Consciousness, in this metaphor, might be like the way a single pattern appears in the cloth, made possible by the tightness of the weave. There is another way of looking at things that imagines the brain as a kind of prediction machine. In this idea, your brain is always trying to guess what is happening and what will happen next. It uses past experiences to build a model of the world and then compares incoming signals, light, sound, touch, to its predictions. When the signals match what it expects, the model is confirmed. When something surprising happens, the brain adjusts its model, updating its expectations. You can picture this as the brain layering expectations over reality, like tracing paper over a drawing. The tracing paper has lines that it thinks will match the world. When they do, everything feels smooth and familiar. When they do not, there is a little jolt of surprise and the lines are quietly redrawn. Some people suggest that consciousness might be connected to this ongoing dance between prediction and reality. When your brain's model is engaged in a rich, flexible way with the world, maybe the result is the vivid, moment-to-moment flow of experience. In dreams, the brain still predicts and fills in details, but with less input from the outside. In deep sleep, perhaps the predictions quiet down and experience fades. Again, you do not need to settle on any of these images as the final truth. They are attempts, from different angles, to describe what might be going on in that glowing city inside your skull when consciousness is present. A stage in a theatre, a woven tapestry of connections, a prediction machine endlessly refining its sketch of the world. All of these ideas are valuable. They inspire experiments. They help us organize data. They give us ways to compare different states: wakefulness, dreaming, anesthesia, coma, and to ask how the brain's activity changes as consciousness fades or returns. But even when these theories fit the measurements well, there remains that extra step, explaining why any of this activity should be accompanied by experience at all. You might think of it like this. Suppose someone gave you a very detailed description of ocean waves, equations, diagrams, measurements of wind speed and water depth. That would be remarkable knowledge. But if you had never stood by the shore feeling the spray on your face, hearing the roar, smelling the salt, something would still be missing. The description would be accurate but incomplete. Only when you stood at the water's edge would you know what the ocean feels like. In a similar way, theories of consciousness may tell us a lot about the structure of brain activity, how information flows, how patterns form. They describe the waves in the brain, but the feeling of being you, hearing, seeing, thinking, remains something that must be lived, not just described. Words and theories point toward it, but they are not the same as the experience itself. This does not mean that the theories have failed. It simply means that consciousness might always have two sides, an outer description and an inner feel. Science excels at the outer description, and it is gradually getting better at relating certain brain patterns to reported experiences. The inner feel, however, may always be something you encounter directly, only from where you are, behind your own eyes, inside your own awareness. If your mind is starting to get tired of ideas and metaphors, that's a good sign. It means you're drifting toward where this whole journey aims to lead you, not to a grand conclusion, but to a place where you can let go of questions and rest. You might notice once, again, the gentle weight of your body, the way your back or side is pressed into the mattress, the warmth gathered under the blankets, the air brushing past your nostrils as you breathe. You might picture your brain not as a busy, troubled place, but as a city whose lights are slowly dimming for the night, one neighborhood at a time. The theater inside you, with its many backstage rooms and bright central stage, is gradually clearing. The actors are bowing and leaving. The curtains are drifting closed. The audience, the many parts of your brain that listen to what appears on the stage, are putting on their coats, filing out, whispering softly as they go. Soon, the theatre will sink into a hush, and the lights will go down to a faint background glow. In the woven fabric of your brain's connections, the tension is easing. The tug of thoughts is less intense. The pattern is loosening, becoming more fluid, more dreaming. The prediction machine is letting go of sharp edges, allowing its guesses to become softer, stranger, like watercolor paintings instead of precise diagrams. You do not need to keep track of which theory is which. You do not need to remember any names or models. All of them are just different ways of saying something profoundly complex and beautiful seems to be happening in your brain when you are awake and aware. And yet, no matter how detailed the description becomes, the simple fact that there is something it feels like to be you right now will always be most directly known from within. So, if consciousness is real, and you, by experiencing this moment, are a quiet proof to yourself that it is, it may not be the kind of thing that can be proven in exactly the same way we prove the properties of rocks or stars. It is more like the ocean. You can analyze its waves, but the feeling of standing at its edge belongs to you alone. That is not a failure. It is a kind of gentle wonder. And as you lie here, letting the questions blur and the details fade, you might remember that wonder is not something you have to hold on to tightly. It can be a soft background, like the night sky itself, always there, always mysterious, but not demanding your attention. You can let your awareness grow dimmer, your thoughts slower, your body heavier, and the mystery of consciousness will not go anywhere. It will be here whenever you wake, quietly lighting up the world again from the inside. If you are still awake, you are doing more than enough. Just being here, breathing, letting the words pass by like slow-moving clouds is all that is asked of you. And if you have drifted in and out, if the story feels like a dream you half remember, that is perfectly all right. You are not meant to hold on to every thread. You can simply arrive here again, noticing this moment of listening, as if it were the only one. You might take a gentle breath in and a long, unhurried breath out. Feel the way your chest rises and settles. Notice the way gravity is quietly pulling your body down into the bed, as if the mattress and the blankets were trying to keep you close to reassure you that you are allowed to rest. Any part of you that is still bracing or gripping can be invited to let go, slowly, like a hand that has been clenched too long, easing open finger by finger. We have already wandered through many images, the brain as a city of tiny lights, consciousness as a stage in a theatre, a woven tapestry, a prediction machine. Each picture offers a different angle, a different way of thinking about why there is something it feels like to be you. And yet, even with all of these ideas, something remains just out of reach. There is a reason that consciousness continues to feel so elusive, even as measurements and theories pile up. One of the reasons is this simple difference between the inside and the outside. From the outside, we can look at brains, behaviors, bodies. We can see eyes moving, muscles contracting, hear words spoken. We can scan brain tissue and watch patterns of activity shift and flow, but all of that is like looking at the outside of a house. You can admire the walls, count the windows, even measure the warmth radiating from within. You can never, from their vantage point, know directly what it feels like on the inside of someone else's home. The smell of their cooking, the softness of their couch, the atmosphere of their living room at night. Your own consciousness is like the inside of that house. You live there. You know what it feels like when a thought arrives, or an emotion washes through, or a memory surfaces. Others can only infer that inner world from signs and signals. Science so far has been built mostly on those outside signs. It is not designed to step wholly into the first-person viewpoint. It can circle the house, map it, analyze it, but not fully inhabit it. Another difficulty is language itself. When you try to talk about your experiences, you are squeezing something rich and flowing into narrow channels of words. Try explaining the exact way a particular piece of music makes you feel, or the specific texture of a childhood memory, or the flavor of your favorite food to someone who has never tasted it. Often you find yourself saying, "It's kind of like," and reaching for metaphors. You compare it to other things, you gesture around it. Describing consciousness is similar. We can talk about awareness and subjective experience, but these phrases are like thick paintbrushes trying to capture delicate patterns. They can suggest the outline, but the fine details are missing, and every person's inner vocabulary is a little different. What feels calm to you might feel neutral to someone else. The word blue carries different emotional tones depending on your history with it. So even when we speak carefully, there is a blur. Words are approximations, not exact replicas. Imagine trying to paint a detailed landscape with mittens on. You can get the major shapes, the broad colours, but the tiny leaves, the subtle shading, the shimmer of light on water are hard to capture. Language wears mittens when it tries to paint consciousness. Measurement has its own limits too. Instruments can be very precise about some things. A thermometer can tell you the exact temperature of your skin. An EEG can record electrical activity on your scalp. A scanner can show how blood flow changes in your brain. But none of these tools can measure the taste of chocolate as you experience it. None can quantify the softness of the feeling you get when someone you love smiles at you, or the subtle shift between being a bit tired and being peacefully drowsy. The instruments see processes and patterns, and those are real. They tell us that consciousness is not floating free of the body. It is linked to activity in this intricate living organ. But they cannot tell us why a certain pattern of signals should have a particular feel, or why any pattern should feel like anything at all. They show us the choreography of a dance, but the music, the inner experience, remains something you have to hear for yourself. Sometimes people try to talk about consciousness as a thing, a kind of object, as if it were a glowing crystal you could hold in your hand and show to someone. But it might be more helpful to think of it as a condition, a way of being. Like a room can be lit or dark. The room is not separate from the light. It is just the same place in a different state. Your mind and body in a conscious state are different from your mind and body in deep dreamless sleep, not because a separate thing has been added or removed, but because the whole system is in a different mode. In that sense, consciousness might not be something you have like an object in your pocket, but something you are, at least while you are awake and aware. It is the way the world shows up for you, the way your existence is lived from the inside. When you are tired, as you may be now, that state becomes softer, dimmer, like a light turned low. Parts of your awareness fold in, and only a small circle around you remains illuminated. Eventually, even that circle fades as sleep comes, and the mode changes again. There is comfort in accepting that we do not, at the moment, have a complete explanation of how all this works. You do not need to feel pressured by the fact that consciousness remains mysterious. Instead, you can treat it as a cozy companion, a quiet mystery that sits at the edge of your awareness like a cat curled at the foot of the bed. It does not demand that you solve it before you rest. It simply keeps you company, purring softly, content to be unsolved. With that sense of gentle mystery in the background, we can bring our attention down from the heights of theory and thought experiments and notice consciousness in its simplest, everyday forms, not in laboratories or thought experiments, but in the small moments that make up a life. Think of a morning when you woke up without an alarm, when you did not have to rush anywhere. There is often a delicate moment when you float in the space between sleeping and waking. Your eyes are still closed. You are not yet sure what time it is. The first thing you notice might be the feel of the sheets against your skin, the warmth of the bed, the weight of the covers. Gradually, other details slip in. The faint sound of birds outside, or distant street noise, or the hum of a heater. That whole process, the world slowly reappearing in your awareness, is consciousness. It is not flashy. It is not complicated. It is simply the way reality comes back into focus, one tiny sensation at a time inside your mind. Throughout the day, countless little windows of consciousness open and close. You lift a cup to your lips and feel the temperature of the drink. You step outside and notice the way the air feels different from the air inside. You walk past a bakery and suddenly you are aware of the smell of warm bread, waking up memories and feelings. Each of these is a small vignette, a moment of experience. Emotions too can be seen as colours in your inner sky. There are days when your awareness feels bright and spacious, like a clear morning. Thoughts move easily, and even small tasks feel light. Other days it might feel overcast, with a heavy grey mood pressing against the edges of your awareness. Sometimes there is a quick passing shower of irritation or sadness blowing through and then fading. At other times there might be a long, steady drizzle of worry. Whatever the weather, consciousness is the sky that holds it, The feelings are the clouds and the storms and the sunlight, changing hour by hour. The sky itself, the open space that allows these things to appear, is your basic awareness. It does not need to be fixed or improved. It simply needs room. Even experiences of discomfort and relief are coloured by consciousness. Think of the small discomfort of sitting in one position too long and then the tiny wave of relief when you shift and your muscles relax. Or the sense of strain when you hold a heavy bag and the flutter of lightness when you put it down. These are not grand events, but they remind you that consciousness is not only about complex thoughts, it is also about the simplest differences between tension and ease, effort and rest. At night, like now, there can be a special kind of tenderness in awareness. You might notice tiredness as a heavy sweetness, like honey on the tongue. Thoughts slow down, sentences stretch out. The edges of your identity feel softer, as if your sense of me is wrapped in blankets too. Those sensations, those subtle shifts, are also part of the tapestry of consciousness. We rarely experience consciousness alone either. Much of life is shared with other aware beings. Picture a conversation with a friend sitting over tea, watching steam rise from your cups. You listen to their words, but you also notice their facial expressions, the way they pause, the tone of their voice. You make guesses about what they are feeling. You imagine yourself in their situation. In moments of connection, it can feel as though two inner worlds are leaning toward each other, touching briefly and then returning to their own centers. No matter how close you feel to someone, you cannot ever fully step inside their awareness. But you can sense that it is there. You recognize it in their eyes, in their laughter, in their tears. When you share a comfortable silence with someone, walking side by side or sitting on the couch watching the rain, you are not exchanging words, but your consciousnesses are still in quiet company. It is as if two lanterns are burning in the same dark room, each with its own flame, each casting overlapping circles of light. This sense of shared inner life extends beyond humans. If you think of a cat stretching in a sunbeam, slowly opening its eyes and then closing them again, it is hard not to imagine something it feels like to be that cat. Not the same as being you, but its own flavour of awareness. The warmth of the sun on fur, the impulse to knead soft fabric, the satisfaction of a full belly. Or imagine a bird perched on a branch, tilting its head to listen, fluffing its feathers against a breeze. Its brain is different from ours, smaller and shaped differently, but it responds to the world, learns, remembers. It seems to have preferences, curiosity, perhaps even joy in flight. There are scientific studies that look at animal behavior and brain activity, and many of them suggest that lots of creatures have their own kind of conscious experience, their own way of feeling the world. Watching a dolphin leap out of the water, twisting in the air, you might sense a spark of playfulness. Seeing an elephant linger by the bones of another elephant, touching them gently, you might sense something like grief or reverence. We cannot ask these animals to fill out questionnaires about their inner lives, but their actions, their brains, and our own intuition as fellow feeling creatures all point toward rich, varied forms of awareness spread across the tree of life. Thinking of this can bring a sense of kinship. You are not the only island of experience in an indifferent universe. Rather, you are part of a vast, quiet archipelago of feeling beings, humans, animals, perhaps even forms of life we have not yet understood. On this single planet drifting through space, countless little lanterns of consciousness flicker on each day, glow for a while, and eventually go dark, making room for new lights. There is a gentle responsibility that can grow from this. If other beings feel, in their own way, then the way we treat them matters not just in an abstract sense, but in the quality of their experience. A calm, safe environment for a pet is not only physically healthier, but also shapes their inner world. A patch of protected forest offers not just habitat, but a home for 1,000 different perspectives on the same sunrise. When we turn our gaze from animals to the machines we build, the picture changes in a different way. Modern computers and programs can do things that once seemed to demand human intelligence. They can recognize faces, translate languages, even compose text and images. They can mimic conversation, respond to questions, and play games at superhuman levels. From the outside, some of these behaviors can look remarkably human-like. A program might respond to your message with seemingly thoughtful words. A robot might move in ways that appear deliberate and responsive. But behaving intelligently is not necessarily the same as feeling. A wind-up toy can move across a table, but we do not think it feels anything as it goes. A calculator can perform complex arithmetic, but we do not imagine it is conscious of the numbers passing through its circuits. As our machines grow more sophisticated, we can use them as new mirrors for thinking about consciousness. We can ask, if a system acts like us in many ways, does that mean it has experiences like ours? If a machine says I'm aware, what would we need to see in its structure, its processing, to take that claim seriously? These questions are not urgent demands. They are soft, future-oriented puzzles. For now, there is no clear consensus about whether even very advanced machines possess anything like our inner life. It is a topic of debate. Some hold that once a system processes information in the right complex way, something like experience might arise. Others think something essential is missing. You do not need to decide tonight. You do not have to take a side. You can simply notice how the question itself highlights what seems most precious about consciousness. It is not just about what we can do. It is about what it feels like from within. When you are sad, there is an ache. When you're joyful, there is a lightness. When you're sleepy, as you may be now, there is a sweetness in letting go. Consciousness, as you know it, is more than outputs and inputs. It is the quiet, continuous presence that lives those states. This presence also connects you to something much larger. Think back to that night sky we visited earlier, with stars scattered across a vast, dark dome. Your awareness, looking up at that sky, is like a small, bright circle standing beneath an enormous arch. You might feel very tiny lying there, a single breathing body on a small world beneath countless stars. And yet, there is a poetic way of seeing this, that when you look at the universe is, in a way, looking at itself. All the matter and energy that once existed as clouds of gas and dust, as stars and planets, has, in you and in others, arranged itself into a form that can notice, wonder, reflect. The atoms in your brain were forged in stars long ago, and regathered in a delicate pattern, they support a consciousness that can marvel at stars. From one angle, you are unimaginably small. From another, your conscious experience is an extraordinary expression of the cosmos. The fact that there is anything it feels like to be you, for even a short span of time, is a quiet, astonishing event. Not something that needs fireworks or fanfare, but something worth a moment of awe, even if that awe is soft and drowsy. You and the night sky are not separate in a hard way. The same laws of physics that shape galaxies shape the neurons in your brain. The same particles that drift in interstellar space exist in your bones. And somehow here, on this particular planet, awareness has blossomed. It listens to rain. It writes poetry. It builds telescopes and asks, "What am I?" If there are other conscious beings elsewhere in the universe, they too might be looking up at their own skies, feeling their own version of curiosity and wonder. Their inner lives, if they exist, would be different in detail, but perhaps similar in essence. A sense of being a someone, surrounded by a world, feeling, thinking, sometimes afraid and sometimes peaceful. You and they would share the same horizon of mystery. What is this thing we call awareness, and how does it arise? We do not yet know if such beings exist. The universe is vast and quiet from our perspective. But even if we are, for now, alone in what we know, we are not alone in time. Generations before you have felt this same mystery. People lying under ancient skies long before telescopes wondered about the stars and about their own minds. People yet to be born will lie in their own beds, listening to their own voices in the dark, feeling the same gentle confusion, the same marvel of being aware. Consciousness then becomes a shared horizon, across species, across eras, maybe across worlds. A gentle, unanswered question that many different kinds of minds can rest their heads against. It does not have to be solved to be meaningful. It does not have to be proven in court or written down in a formula to quietly shape every moment of your life. As you sink deeper into your own awareness of this evening, you do not need to hold the whole universe in your thoughts. It is enough to feel the small slice of reality that is touching you now. The contact of your body with the bed, the air moving in and out of your lungs, the fading edges of the room around you. All the big ideas about consciousness, the puzzles, the theories, the cosmic reflections, can now begin to soften. They can step back, like actors leaving the stage, while something simpler takes their place. The rhythm of your breathing, the heaviness in your limbs, the gentle knowledge that you are allowed to rest without having answered all the questions. Soon, we will let go of explanations and allow the words themselves to become slower, more repetitive, more like waves than sentences. For now, you can just notice that you are here, a small warm center of awareness in a vast, mysterious universe, and that it is enough, more than enough, for this awareness to gently dim as sleep draws nearer, like a star gradually slipping behind a soft, protective cloud. If you are still awake with me, we are now in the softest part of the night. The big questions have been asked. The ideas have wandered in wide circles. There is nothing more you need to figure out. From here, the words are only here to keep you gentle company while your mind loosens its hold and drifts. Take a moment to notice how you are lying. Perhaps your body has become heavier since you first settled in. Maybe you have shifted without quite remembering when. If you want to make any last little adjustments, you can do that now, as slowly as you like. A pillow moved a few centimeters, a blanket smoothed, a leg stretched out then allowed to sink back into place. When you are still again, feel one simple breath, in softly, out slowly. You do not have to count. You do not have to match a pattern. Just notice that each inhale arrives and each exhale leaves. That is enough. For a while we have been touching on thoughts about brains and theories, puzzles and possibilities, other minds and faraway stars. You did not need to remember all of that. You do not need it now. The learning part of the evening is finished, like a book gently closing on a bedside table. The story does not vanish, but it does not need to be held in your hands anymore. From here, the words will become simpler, like waves that repeat and repeat, carrying you without effort. The main idea we will lean on is a very small one. You're aware, and you do not have to prove it to anyone. You're allowed to rest inside that awareness, and then to let it soften until sleep arrives on its own. Imagine, if you like, that your mind is a quiet ocean at night. There is no storm here. The surface is mostly calm but not perfectly still. Little ripples pass through here and there. Each ripple is a thought, a memory, a fragment of the day. They rise, travel a small distance, and then flatten out again, blending back into the broader surface of the water. Above this ocean, the sky is dark and gentle. Maybe there is a thin crescent moon, laying a path of silver light across the water. That light is your awareness, softly illuminating whatever happens to be on the surface at this moment. The feeling of your body in bed, the sound of this voice, the faint sense of the room around you. Nothing's being judged. Nothing is being measured. The light simply touches what is there. Beneath the surface, the ocean is deep. The deeper you go, the colder and stiller it becomes. That depth is another way to imagine your awareness in its peaceful state. Thoughts are like surface ripples, but below them is a vast, steady quiet. You cannot see the bottom. You do not need to. It is enough to know that there is more to you than the occasional wave. There is also this depth, already calm, already at rest. Now picture yourself as a small boat on this ocean. The boat is your body, holding you gently. It rocks a little with each breath, a tiny rise and fall. You do not have to steer. There is no destination. You're not trying to reach any shore. You are simply floating where you are, under the night sky, on top of the dark, calm water of your own mind. Thoughts may come, like small ripples brushing against the hull. Feelings may come like changes in the wind. They all pass. The boat remains. When a thought about the day appears, something you said, something you wish had gone differently, you can imagine it as a small wave that briefly lifts one side of the boat. You notice it, feel its motion, and then let it travel on, fading back into the general movement of the water. When a worry about tomorrow arrives, it too is a wave. You do not have to argue with it or solve it. It rises, passes beneath the boat, and continues into the dark, losing its shape as it goes. Every time you exhale, you can imagine the surface smoothing out just a little more. The waves become longer, slower. The boat rocks less and less. The moonlight broadens, spreads, and then dims, as if the sky itself is getting ready to sleep. As the ocean of your mind grows calmer, you might bring your attention back to your body just for a moment, and let it be part of this same peaceful picture. Imagine your awareness as a soft, warm light moving slowly through you, from the top of your head to the tips of your toes, checking each place and then gently dimming there as it moves on. Start at your forehead. Picture that warm light resting there, noticing any tiny lines of tension, any small frown that has lingered from the day. With a slow breath out, imagine those lines smoothing away as if someone has run a fingertip over the surface of still water. The light dims slightly as your forehead relaxes, moving on. Let the light float down to your eyes. Even if they are closed, they might still carry a bit of effort, as if they're trying to stay alert. See if they can soften in their sockets, the muscles around them loosening. Imagine the warm light pooling in your eyes for a moment, then settling, like sand sinking to the bottom of a clear pool. Move down to your cheeks and jaw. If you notice any clenching, any tightness, let the warm light rest there as if it were a small sun melting a patch of snow. With your next exhale, allow your jaw to hang just a little looser, your tongue to rest comfortably. The light grows dimmer here too, as if it has finished its work and is turning down for the night. Let the light drift into your neck and throat. These parts often hold the weight of unsaid words, unexpressed emotions, long hours of holding your head upright. For now, there is nothing they have to say, nothing they have to support. The warm light passes through, soothing every small knot, and then fades, leaving only a feeling of gentle heaviness, like a scarf that has slipped from your shoulders and fallen to the floor. From your neck, the light moves into your shoulders, those quiet carriers of the day's burdens. Imagine the warm glow settling into the muscles there, gently convincing them that they do not need to lift anything at this moment. As it does, your shoulders can sink a little deeper into the bed, as if the mattress is rising very slightly to meet them. With each breath out, the light here grows softer and softer, like the last embers of a fire cooling into ash. Let the light travel down your arms, through your upper arms, your elbows, your forearms, down to your wrists and hands. You may feel a tiny tingling as you pay attention, or nothing in particular, and either way is fine. Imagine the light flowing all the way to your fingertips, warming them gently, then dimming until it is just a memory of warmth, leaving your arms heavy and still, resting where they are without effort. Now the warm awareness gathers in your chest. Feel the gentle rise and fall as you breathe. You might picture the light pulsing slightly with each breath, expanding as you inhale, softening as you exhale. There is nothing to fix here, nothing to adjust. The chest simply moves like a small wave on the surface of that nighttime ocean. After a few breaths, the light begins to fade here too, leaving a sense of quiet movement, automatic and easy. It drifts down into your stomach and abdomen. So many organs live here, working for you without your conscious command. Digestion, circulation, subtle chemical balances, all of it happening whether or not you are aware. Thank this part of your body, silently if you like, for everything it does. Let the warm light bathe it in comfort, then gently dim, leaving only softness behind. From there, the awareness slides into your hips and pelvis, then into your thighs. These are strong areas, used to carrying you through your days. Tonight, they do not need to stand or walk or sit upright. They can surrender to gravity. Imagine the warm light soaking into the muscles, like sunlight into dark earth after rain, and then fading, leaving the soil rich and resting. The light moves slowly past your knees, into your calves, your shins, your ankles. If you notice any tension, perhaps a slight urge to move or a feeling of restlessness, remind this part of you that there is nothing it must do. The night is long enough, the body can be still. Feel the last glow of the light seeping into your feet and toes, a final wash of warmth, and then going out, so gradually that you barely notice when it is gone, leaving your legs like stones resting at the bottom of the ocean, perfectly supported, perfectly still. Now your whole body has been visited by this warm, gentle awareness. Each place has been seen, acknowledged, and then allowed to fade into a comfortable blur. You do not have to keep track of individual parts anymore. Your body can become one single heavy presence, resting on the bed, held by it, like that small boat resting fully on the calm water of your mind. From this place we can let the thoughts themselves become simpler. You might begin to circle around a few short soothing ideas, like mantras, not to be repeated mechanically, but to be felt and then allowed to dissolve. One simple thought is, you're aware. That is all. Not, you're aware of this, or you're aware of that. Just the basic sense that there is a quiet presence here. You do not have to sharpen it or hold on to it. It can be soft, like a dim light in the corner of a room. Another thought. You do not have to prove anything. Not tonight. Not about consciousness, not about your worth, not about your productivity, not about the day you have just lived. All the demands and expectations that may crowd your mind during daylight hours can be set down, at least for now. You're allowed to exist without explaining yourself, even to yourself. A third thought: you're safe enough to rest. The world outside may not be perfect, but in this moment, in this space, your body is lying down, supported. The breath is moving. The heart is beating. The room is holding you like a shell holds a pearl. You may not feel completely safe in every part of your life, but you can borrow a sense of safety from the simple facts of this moment. You are here, you are breathing, you are allowed to sleep, and finally, it is okay to fall asleep. It is okay if you missed pieces of this, if your attention wandered, if the ideas blurred together. It is okay if you drift off in the middle of a sentence, if you stop listening altogether. The purpose of these words is not to keep you awake, but to walk beside you until you no longer need them. You can let these 4 ideas drift through you, not as rigid phrases, but as gentle impressions. I am aware. I do not have to prove anything. I'm safe enough to rest. It is okay to fall asleep. They do not have to be in order. They do not even have to be complete. They can appear in your mind half-formed, safe enough. Okay to sleep. Nothing to prove. And then scatter like seeds in the dark soil of your awareness. You do not need to follow them. You do not need to repeat them on purpose. They are simply there if you want them, like soft cushions in the corner of a dim, quiet room. As your awareness softens further, the edges of your sense of self might begin to blur. You may feel less like a solid, separate shape and more like something that is gently melting into the bed, into the darkness of the room, into the night air itself. Imagine your boundaries softening, as if the outline of your body were drawn in chalk and a slow, warm rain is washing the lines away. Your thoughts, too, can become less sharp. They may begin to half-mutate into dream images. A sentence might start in one direction and end in another. You may notice that you are no longer fully following this voice, that other scenes are appearing behind your closed eyes, a hallway you once walked down, a place you imagined but never visited, a person from nowhere in particular. This is not a problem. It is a sign that your brain is gently letting go of the strict structure of waking consciousness and sliding into the more fluid world of sleep. You do not need to force this shift. In fact, trying to force sleep often pushes it away. Instead, you can treat sleep as something that arrives like a cat in a quiet house, slowly, quietly, when it senses that you are not chasing it. If you stay still, listen softly, and do nothing in particular, sleep will, sooner or later, curl up beside you. If you notice yourself checking to see whether you're asleep yet, you can smile inwardly and let that checking be just another little wave on the ocean. It rises, it falls, it disappears. You do not need to scold yourself for being awake. Your body knows how to sleep. It has done it many times. It will do it again in its own rhythm. You might drift for a moment into a dreamlet and then bob back up into awareness. That is natural. There is no test. There is no scoreboard counting how many minutes you've been awake. There is only this ongoing process of softening and returning, until one of those softening phases simply does not return for a while, and you are gone into deeper sleep. Before you slip away entirely, we can offer a quiet farewell to the ideas that kept us company tonight. We have visited the feeling of being you in ordinary moments, the taste of something warm, the sound of rain, the weight of your body in bed. We have peeked into the brain as a city of lights, moving in patterns that correlate with awareness. We have told ourselves strange, gentle stories about machines and colours, about actors on stages and tapestries of connection. We have thought of animals, of other living beings, as possible carriers of their own inner worlds, and we have looked up toward the night sky, wondering whether the universe is, through us, softly waking up to itself. But as sleep approaches, none of the detail matters. What remains is the feeling that you were accompanied in your wandering, that you did not have to face the mystery of consciousness alone. The facts may fade, the phrases may dissolve, the warmth of being gently spoken to in the dark can linger a little longer, even as the content slips away. You can remind yourself one last time that your inner world is real and valid, even if it is hard to describe, even if it cannot be perfectly measured. The way you experience colour, sound, touch, memory, emotion, this is your own quiet universe. You do not need a certificate or a scientific paper to justify it. It is enough that you live it. It is also completely acceptable not to understand everything about this universe. In fact, perhaps the most human thing is to live inside unanswered questions. To walk through your days with a small pocket of wonder you never fully unpack. Consciousness, the simple and mysterious fact of being aware, can be one of those questions you keep not as a burden, but as a companion, something you occasionally turn over in your hands and then tuck away again when it is time to rest. Now, it is that time to put down the question and simply be the one who asks it, the one who breathes, the one who sleeps. If you are still following these words, you can imagine them becoming softer and softer, like a voice moving down a hallway, getting farther away. The syllables lose their sharpness, the meaning becomes less important. What remains is just a gentle sound, a tone of kindness and calm that says, without needing to say it clearly, "Good night, you can rest now." Let the room grow quieter in your awareness. Let your body feel heavier, or lighter, whichever feels more like drifting. Let your breath be the only rhythm you need to notice. In and out, like the slow tide of that nighttime ocean we pictured earlier. At some point, there will be a last sentence you hear clearly. You will not know it is the last one. After that, there will be a blur, and then nothing you can remember, and that nothing will be sleep, doing its gentle, necessary work. Until then, you are simply here, in this soft space between waking and dreaming, wrapped in your own awareness, held by the bed, by the room, by the quiet of the night. And as you drift, you can let go little by little, thought by thought, until all that is left is a feeling with no words at all.